Okay, so 1 Samuel 27. We were supposed to cover this on Sunday. We didn't quite make it. Spent some time in 25 and 6, and I knew that we had a review night tonight, and so I thought I would take just a couple of minutes tonight and cover this. David has once again had the opportunity to kill King Saul, but he refused to do that because Saul was the Lord's anointed, and he said, I will not stretch out my hand. I will not take the life of the man that God has chosen to be king. Then in both times he has spoken to Saul and said, hey, I want you to see what I could have done. I had the opportunity to kill you, but I chose not to because I don't wish any harm upon you, and you need to call off this search. And in both times, Saul, at least in that moment, recognized, you're right. I need to stop this. But David knows that that will be short-lived. So in 27 and verse 1, David said to himself, now I will perish one day by the hand of Saul. There is nothing better for me than to escape into the land of the Philistines. Saul then will despair of searching for me anymore in all the territory of Israel, and I will escape from his hand. David knows that Saul will again change his mind and keep coming after him. So he's going to flee to the land of the Philistines, and he is going to fake an allegiance to the Philistines while he is there. So he goes over in verse 2 to Achish, the king of Gath, and David and his men, 600 soldiers, but also wives and probably children. It's not unreasonable to think that David has 2,000 or 3,000 people with him at this point. And they all go to the Philistines, to Achish. And Achish welcomes David because he thinks David is joining his side. But David's got a large crew of people. And he works it out that Achish will give him a place out in the country for all of them to live. And the city of Ziklag is given to David. So in verse 6, Ziklag has belonged to the kings of Judah to this day, meaning to the time the book was written, right? Now, David in verse 8 through 10 is going to go out and attack or raid some of the enemies of Israel. And he will take no prisoners. His soldiers will kill everyone. There will be no survivors. And the reason they do that is so that word does not come back to King Achish of the Philistines that David is actually hunting your enemies. You see, David's coming back to Achish and he's saying, oh man, I raided these Israeli people today, these towns that Achish is thinking, oh, David's, sure enough, he's on my side. He's going out, he's helping us. That's not what was happening. So David is tricking the king of the Philistines, but Achish trusts David. He believes that David is on his side. Now we're going to see in chapter 29 that the rest of the Philistines don't trust David, and that's going to cause a problem. But for now, David uses his situation among the Philistines to his advantage. In chapter 27 and verse 12, Achish believed David and said, surely he has made himself odious among his people in Israel, and therefore he will be my servant forever. He's with us. Well, not really, but for the time being, David is going to use this circumstance to his advantage. Okay. That's all I want to say about chapter 27. I just didn't want to skip over it. But I will take some comments if you have them. You got any questions about anything? And you heard this ominous music coming out of the speaker, so now you're wondering what's coming up next. Brian?
I think it was in 21 where he actually went to Achish and acted like he was crazy.
Act like he was crazy? Yes, that's right.
So now he comes back and now they got to trust him.
He's a new man. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Long time ago, I showed you back when we were studying Exodus and going through the tabernacle, I showed you one of the Appian Media videos. And we're going to watch a couple of those tonight that go along with what we've been studying in our class. Okay, so I'm going to have Chris play these two videos. The first one is long. It's about 21 minutes long. Okay, and the second video is also of the same length, but we're only going to watch about the first third of it, okay? So we'll watch the first one, then Chris will stop it. I'll get some comments if anybody has them, and then we'll watch the second one after that, okay? All right, go ahead.
For Israel, Gilgal became a significant location, but it's not something that we know exactly where it is.
We know that it was northeast of Jericho somewhere, probably 3 to 5 miles. There was another Gilgal that was especially associated with Elijah and Elisha that probably was not this same location. It was probably up in the hill country. Among the things that they remember from this location is there was the original landing point. When they crossed the Jordan River, which sits about 2 to 3 miles to our east, this was where they camped for a long time. The word Gilgal literally means a circle of stones, and a lot of times those were used in religious practices.
And some people speculate, since it was a place of circular stones, some place that was more of a sacrificial site, it makes sense that we might not have as much to find. To imagine Moses being on the other side on Mount Nebo looking in, and to imagine all of those Israelites crossing the Jordan across a dry riverbed and setting up memorial stones that came from the bottom of the riverbed, you understand what a historical national monument just the spot would have been. And so it makes sense that the place of primary sacrifice for their first king was at that spot.
Samuel would rotate between Ramah and Mizpah and Bethel and Gilgal as he did his yearly duties. Saul was told by Samuel that there was going to come a time in which he was going to need to meet him here and to wait on him so that Samuel could offer sacrifice. Saul waited and waited and waited, and when Samuel didn't come quick enough for Saul, he went ahead and offered a sacrifice.
At that sacrifice, Samuel proclaimed something very strong against Saul.
Samuel actually told Saul that he was going to take the kingdom away from his family and he was going to look for a man after God's own heart.
I think there are personal lessons that we can all learn from Saul and the mistakes that he made, where we get ahead of God, whether out of fear or desperation. We don't wait. And so we act out on our own and try to solve our problems in ways other than what God has instructed.
Later in Saul's life, Samuel had given him the instruction to utterly destroy the Amalekites. When Samuel arrived here at Gilgal, Saul had saved King Agag and a number of the best cattle. This did not sit well with Samuel.
Well, he had disobeyed God's instruction, and he failed to finish the battle. And Samuel actually picks up a sword, and he's the one who kills King Agag at Gilgal on the spot.
And it was at this point when Samuel and Saul parted ways. It mentions in the Bible that Samuel never saw Saul again.
And it was a dramatic parting. I mean, when Samuel explained to him that the kingdom had been removed from him and that God was going to be looking for somebody else, Saul clung to him, tore his robe. Samuel used it as an object lesson. Just like you've torn my robe, God's torn the kingdom away from you. I think it's fitting when we're talking about Saul to come to a place like Gilgal where we're not exactly sure where it is, because there were some things that he did for the kingdom that were positive. He was the first national ruler. He was the first one to try to take the military out and to transition from the judges to a king. But in a lot of ways, his kingship was temporary. And so just like Gilgal, we're not exactly sure where that was. That's kind of Saul. My personal opinion is that the text indicates that he was always ill-suited to be a ruler. And it seems to hint that God gave them the ruler they deserved. They had rejected him, and God was going to give them a leader that was suited to helping them learn that they needed to rely on him. Things really didn't start to progress until you get to David. After God rejected Saul at Gilgal, God sent Samuel to anoint somebody else, a man after his own heart. and he sent him to the home of Jesse the Bethlehemite, so someone that lived in Bethlehem. Samuel was afraid that Saul would hunt him down when he found out that he was going to anoint another king. God actually gave Samuel a cover story of going down and offering a sacrifice with this family. They went through 7 of Jesse's sons, didn't find the right one, and Jesse ends up explaining that he's got one more son who's out in the field taking care of the sheep.
And that's exactly where they found David. David would have been out in an area just like this.
I'm seeing these little paths cutting through the field. What are those?
Well, those are actually paths caused by the sheep as they walk through here. Shepherds still bring their sheep to these hillsides even today.
This is not what I would have pictured a field to look like.
We often have the idea of pasture land where you would take sheep to graze as being nice and lush and green. But we're in the hill country of Judah, and this is the area where people would have been.
I don't think it's an overstatement to talk about how formative David's time was as a shepherd.
The producers didn't put that
He
flag
references
across there.
the lessons he learned taking care of the sheep and defending them. When he's explained to Saul, look, God took care of me fighting off a lion and a bear. He's going to take care of me as I go out and fight this Philistine. He refers to David as the shepherd of Israel, how he took him from shepherding sheep to shepherd his people.
And it's interesting, too, that once you get to the New Testament, that Jesus pulls that imagery to talk about himself. And he says, I am a good shepherd. Of course, a good shepherd, just like David would have been, would know how to take care of his sheep and know how to provide for them and protect them.
We've seen them responding to their shepherd's call. He'll whistle, he'll click, he'll have an instruction, and they turn and they pay attention. Taking care of animals is not always a glamorous job. It's smelly, it can get dirty. You're out in the open. It was that kind of responsibility that God used to get David ready for leading the kingdom. The occupation of a shepherd hasn't changed from David's time to now. Same country, same hillside, same type of pastures, same trails. The Bible knows what it's talking about. As it describes this millennia-old occupation that was so formative, it just really helped to visualize that. It makes it come alive. After Saul was rejected by God and Samuel, you try to imagine how much turmoil he must have felt, trying to figure out when his time as king of Israel would be over. Samuel, in secret, anoints David, but he hasn't been installed as a king yet. Saul is trying to fight these battles with the Philistines, wondering when he's going to be replaced.
And that brings us to one of the most famous stories in all of the Old Testament, as we walk beside a brook in the Valley of Elah.
Okay, hang tight. So the projector is the problem. Back here, it works fine. So I'm just going to reboot this one, and we'll see if we can get it going again.
If I were to ask someone, tell me the story of David and Goliath, they would tell me that there was this giant, he came and
Turn around and crane your neck, look at the
It was
back.
a wonderful opportunity to show the faith of David. And they would be exactly right. That's the right story. But the Bible tells it a little bit differently. The Bible scopes it in geography. In 1 Samuel 17, it starts off and says, Now the Philistines gathered their armies for battle, and so they were gathered at Soka, which belongs to Judah, and Soka is located just along that ridge over there on the eastern end of the valley. And they encamped between Soka and Azekah. Now Azekah sits just around the corner here. So we are in between Soka and Azekah. It says Saul and the men of Israel were gathered and encamped in the valley of Elah, and drew up a line of battle against the Philistines. The Philistines stood on the mountain on one side, that mountain over there, and Israel stood on the mountain on the other side, with a valley in between them. And that's how the Bible sets up this story. Then it introduces the main characters of the story.
Well, then later on we know that when David finally went down to battle with Goliath, he didn't use any of Saul's armor or his sword, but he crosses a brook and picks up 5 smooth stones.
Right, and of course we just crossed the brook ourselves right here below us.
So he would have come down from the Israelite camp, crossed that brook, and then gone down into the valley.
That's exactly right. Then David came out here and faced the giant. And I believe at that point he gives one of the most moving speeches that's in all of the Bible. In 1 Samuel 17, after Goliath has taunted him, it says in verse 45, Then David said to the Philistine, You come to me with a sword and a spear and a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. I will give the dead bodies of the host of the Philistines this day to the birds of the air, to the beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel, that all this assembly may know that the Lord saves not with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hand. Such a beautiful speech. And of course, we know that as soon as he finished that, he took one of those stones, put it in his sling, and killed Goliath.
It's obvious reading that and sharing that is a very emotional thing. Does it hit you more to read that here in the valley?
There's something about coming to this exact location and rereading it again. When I read this passage, I often think about my own life. And there are times in my life I wish I had the faith to stand up to things that trouble me and things that taunt me in life. It's obvious that David was able to face this person who was much bigger than him, but he knew where his faith was. And he knew, based on past experiences with God, that he was going to be the victor here, as with anybody if God's on their side.
I think everybody who reads the story of David and Goliath feels that way. That there are moments where we wish we had demonstrated the faith of David in overcoming obstacles and trusting in God, not just having faith in general, but trusting that God would deliver us and that he would respond. And in the development of the context of 1 Samuel and the United Kingdom, you've got this incredible transition happening between Saul and David. You have the king who's giving his garments, his armor, to somebody else. You've got David who ends up using a shepherd's sling as his weapon of choice, but it was Saul's tribe, the Benjamites, that were renowned for their accuracy with a sling. So David's using Saul's tribe's weapon to take down this giant. It should have been Saul down there, but he didn't do it. The writer of 1 Samuel is establishing David as Saul's replacement. He's the next anointed. He's the next king. And to be here, it's not just another story. It's not just another myth. It fits the geography of the land. And he puts so much attention and detail into that to help us establish that. Every culture lionizes its heroes. They glorify and exaggerate facts. It's easy to think, and I know that there are skeptics who do. They read the David and Goliath story and think, well, that's just so made up. But with what Barry pointed out, it's so rooted in accurate geography, even subtle details in this quest for, was this real? Did it actually happen? It fits the history of the period between the Philistines and the Israelites. The entire world is familiar with the David and Goliath story. From a literary perspective, it's powerful because in David's speech, he emphasizes, he already knows that people are going to hear about the next couple of minutes for the rest of history. And he wants them to understand something about God from it, not something about him. The reason that Goliath went down was because God helped David do that. And the God of Israel, the Yahweh of Israel, was the true and living God.
Walking around here in the valley is a really neat way to experience it. But there's also other vantage points as well. I want to take you to a hillside where the Israelites were encamped. There's a site up there called Kirbet Kiapa. They've done some recent excavation work there from the time of David. And I think from there we can get a much better visual image of the entire area, although it's a little bit more difficult to get to.
Imagine the fire, the people sitting out there and walk.
Right.
And then climb to Kayapa is the time of the week.
Is that the road we're going up? Oh man, that is so beautiful.
One of the reasons why we wanted to come up here was to see this beautiful view of the Elah Valley. The Philistines, of course, would have been on that side, the Israelites on this side, and you can see how the whole battle would have happened right here in front of you. If you can imagine, for 40 days, Goliath coming out of those hills and standing right down there, they could have easily hurt him.
David goes down and slays Goliath. The Philistines have officially lost, but then the Israelites rush down the side to follow David, and they chase the Philistines toward Gath.
They do, and it says that they fell on the way to Sha'arim. The question is where is Sha'arim? We're not 100% sure, but the word Sha'arim in Hebrew means two gates. When they dug here at Kiryat Kiapha, this city actually has two gates. And so it's probable that the place where the Philistines were killed were along this road between Kiryat Kiapha and Gath.
What other value is there to coming up here besides just the view?
A lot of the things they found here are unique, and they're unique to the time of King David, and they're unique to Judean cities. For instance, come on into this room right here. Let me show you something. All of these cities had casemate walls, and what you have here are a double set of walls that surround the entire part of the city, but you'll see this gap here in the middle. Well, this gap could be used as an extra room or a storage room. However, in the event that they were attacked, they could fill this with even personal items, but debris and everything, and that would give a huge, thick wall to protect them.
So what you're saying is this type of wall, built during David's reign, there are so many things they found here that are dated to that period in the Iron Age, that this is evidence that David was a ruler of more than just a tribal area, that he was a monarch. It wasn't just that he was ruling from Jerusalem. There are cities, walled cities, fortified cities, outside of where he was living.
That's exactly like what we read in the Bible.
To stand on top of this city and overlooking one of his greatest moments of victory. There was a wheat field and there was a vineyard, there was an olive grove. To see the sun moving across that, it just felt so grand. That was pretty special. When you read about David being pursued by Saul, and he moves from place to place to place, the forests of Hereth, or over to Moab to ask the king there to keep his parents safe. He's a fugitive trying to stay one step ahead of him. But this is a decade-long pursuit. There's a lot that happens in between David killing Goliath and him hiding out in a cave. Saul sent soldiers after him a couple different times. He fled to the priests at Nob. He hid out in Gath, Goliath's hometown. And eventually he goes to the cave of Adullam.
If he were to go from Gath to the cave of Adullam, which is what he did, he would have had to walk through the valley of Elah. I wonder what went through his mind. I mean, just prior to this, that was the location where he had been praised because of what he did, and now he's on the run. The caves of Adullam sits in a fairly remote part of the country. I think that's probably one of the reasons why he came out here. He knew that he would be at least temporarily secluded from King Saul and his men that were chasing him. Wow, this is incredible.
It is so much larger in here than I expected.
There are caves heading off in that direction. There's caves heading off in this direction. I can see light down here, so there must be another opening down there somewhere. This is the perfect place for David to hide. He's up high. He could easily go outside this cave. He can see for miles around him.
A natural fortified location. How deep does this cave system go?
You know, I have no idea. You want to go find out?
Okay. We'll talk for just a minute, and then I want you to see a few minutes of the next video. But what do you think? What stood out to you? We talked a little bit about that cave and size and some of that. So you're going to see a little bit more of that at the beginning of the next video. Anything else?
The distance between how wide the valley where David and Goliath, thinking about it from the perspective that Goliath came out.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a vast open area. So how far did he come across the valley so that the Israelites could hear him, challenge him or whatever? I visualized that being a
Smaller.
much shorter distance.
Okay.
Between those two mountains.
Yeah. Okay. Bryce?
We didn't see it, but they mentioned how, I guess it was Benjamin, the tribe of Benjamin, their weapon of choice was
The sling, right?
They talked about how
It's in the book of Judges, yeah.
There's like a bunch of things that we may not notice because if we don't know the history or the archaeology or things like that, that are just little things in there that indicate what God's doing with David and
Okay.
replacing Saul.
Yeah, good. I'm glad you caught that. I wondered if, in fact, I missed it the first time I watched the video, and I caught it when we were going through it this time. Okay, Chris, let's go ahead and do the next one, and we'll go about 7.5 minutes or so.
It looks like the walls have been built up and reinforced.
Right, they may have been filled in. This may have been more open during the time of David.
Oh, surely to fit all those people.
That's right.
David's time here at the Cave of Adullam was very short, and only a couple of verses in 1 Samuel 22 that mention that. Even though it's mentioned so briefly, obviously it makes sense why he came here. Look at how much this opens up in here.
This is huge.
Oh, there's a bat flying around over there. And another tunnel leading out. There are little nooks and crannies all over the place. There's a place for a millstone, a small millstone.
Hey, look over here. Look over here.
Wow. It looks like an entrance.
How deep does it go?
It looks like the wall used to continue around. Maybe it's been backfilled. But the cave continues on the other side.
There's just room after room.
Oh, man. Look at this.
Oh my.
It was surreal to think about this being the spot where David hid out and to wonder which of these entrances was the one that he used every day. Which of these places was the place where he slept? And to think about this cavern being filled up with the people that had come to him, with the soldiers, his mighty men. Could 400 people really have met up with David and hid out here? Once you got into the cave system, it could easily house as many people as the text says that came and united with David here. It felt like we had gone through a time warp back to that day, and you might see David walking around at any moment. after David left Adullam and hid his parents in Moab, he kept moving around.
That's right. We are on the edge of the Judean wilderness. This part of the country only gets about 4 to 5 inches of rain per year. So it had been very important for David and his men to find water, which is why they came here to the streams of En-Gedi.
I would never imagine being in a place so arid as the Judean wilderness and then seeing a waterfall with a stream like this gurgling through.
It's a beautiful place, and of course you can see even here in the middle of the summer, water still comes through here. Take a look at this place. This is very similar to the caves of Adullam in the fact that it's remote. In addition to that, he had a layer of protection here. He would have been able to see when people were coming. The most important thing, of course, is the water. As you walk around this area, you can see for miles, this is the only place where water is. And so water continually funnels through the wilderness of Judea into this narrow valley that comes through En-Gedi. During the rainy times of the year, the water can be actually much higher than we are right now. In fact, you can see some of the markings and stuff on the wall where the water has been up that high during the wet season.
Again, Barry has taken us to a place that the Bible describes David going to during Saul's pursuit of him. And it's not some random place. It makes sense that he went there. And it makes sense why he went there. It's a real place, and you can walk up that canyon yourself. It was at En-Gedi that Saul heard David was there. He brings his troops down, and he needs to take care of some business. Goes into a cave. It just happens to be the cave where David and his men are hiding. He had the peer pressure of his soldiers saying, God has given you a moment. God has provided an opportunity for you to eliminate the opposition. And David goes as far as to cut the king's robe, just the corner of it. And then guilt overcomes him, and he goes out after Saul leaves the cave to let him know, look, your life is in my hands. I could have removed you if I wanted to. For 10 years, David was on the run, trying to keep from being killed by Saul. And it would have been so tempting to cut all of that short by eliminating him in that cave.
He knew this was his opportunity to get back at Saul. But I appreciate David's attitude in the whole thing. Through all of this, he recognized that Saul was the king. He was the king chosen by God. David was a man after God's own heart. He had honor for the king, even though he was in the situation that he was in.
Okay, thanks, Chris, Todd. All right. Let me turn this light on. Was that helpful to you? It's, wrong one. Sorry. Does that make it more real? Jimmy said it did. Right? You saw it. You saw the valley. It's bigger than you thought. What did I say about En-Gedi when we studied that? That it was green, that there's water, right? And you've seen that now. It makes sense why David would go there to seek refuge from Saul. Not only the water, but what about the terrain around the water? What was that like? Mountains and caves, right? We talked about all that in our class. So I was looking through these videos and I thought, okay, this may be helpful to let everybody see the places that we're talking about, places that you can go even today. And some of you have done that, I'm sure. What comments do you have? Do you have anything that you want to add to this? Was anything that stuck out to you?
It seems to me that life in a place like that, earning a living, growing food, would have been very, very, very difficult. Very difficult.
Yeah. They talk about this in another one of the movies. that they've made, or videos they've made. We just didn't watch it in this one, but they said you think about sheep going out to graze. We think about pastures that are what color?
Green.
Green, right?
Green.
Right? There's no green out there in most places. Yeah. But there's still grass. There's still, vegetation for them to eat. It's just not what we're thinking of. Joe?
It's kind of interesting. Now, in the spring of the year, when they have that 4 or 5 inches of rain on those hills, it'll turn green
Yeah.
for a short period of time. And then it's just back to this brown stubble. The brown stubble had to come from something.
Mm-hmm.
It came from that short period of time when everything greened up. So it's only for a few weeks that you look over those hills, it would be green. And then the rest of the year, they're in the dry stubble.
Yeah. Yep. Good. Okay.
That's why there's goats there.
That's why there's goats there.
Not
Yeah, okay. Finish this sentence from Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. Does that have a little more significance to you now? Because David lives among brown pastures. So the idea being God really provides. He gives green pasture, not brown. Okay, Sarah?
I just want to say I appreciate being able to see it too, because of, sometimes we get stuck in what our perspective is and our experiences. So if you've never been there and you've never seen it, you do look at it and think, oh, green pastures, it's flat. But it's not. And, the difference between, you got cows out there, they would fall down the hill because that's not how they live, but sheep and goats do. And just kind of putting it in a little bit more like, this is how they lived and this is what it really looks like now. I just really
Yeah.
like that stuff.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Just couldn't tell how hot it was.
Couldn't tell how hot it was, right? Yeah.
It amazes me how we have a lot of diversity in the United States as far as mountains and desert, but that is such a small area. It just goes from one extreme to the other, all the way down.
Okay.
It's a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot of change in a very small area. Yeah. Okay, good. Jake?
The harshness of how they have to live only adds to the isolation that David and his people are feeling, right? And you saw how far they traveled. And then on top of that, he's got King Saul chasing him, trying to kill him. So take that now and think, man, that's a hard life to live. Guys chasing me all over, trying to kill me. And then look at the places that he's having to travel to. That's
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's not easy running, is it? Right? I mean, David and all of his men are hiking up and down those mountains, and they've got, like I said earlier, wives and children. They may have some livestock that need to, cattle or sheep or whatever that need to follow with them. That's tough. Wayne?
Well, one of the thoughts that I have is looking at the terrain, the mountains and the valleys and the big rocks and such. It seems to me that would make it very difficult for an individual or a group of people pursuing another group of people to find them, simply because there's so many places to hide.
Right.
Hills to get behind, valleys to go in, gullies or whatever. I mean, it just...
And that's something we talked about from 1 Samuel 24, when Saul just happens to go in the exact cave where David was hiding, right? What are the odds of that? Well, they're not good. And that's why we think that it was a providential meeting, right?
Even the Bible talks about it being on the opposite side of a valley. I mean, you can't do anything in terms of harming the other enemy because you can't see them or get to them.
Okay, good.
Well, I mean, God at any time could have said, kill Saul.
Sure.
He said kill other people. So I have to think this was some kind of a test for David to find out about endurance or what he could handle after what Saul had been.
Okay, good. And endurance, that's a good word. Did you notice twice, Jeremy said in the video that this chasing of David went on for 10 years? Okay? I know you caught that because Christine's always asking about the chronology of it, and I think about that too. I don't know where that comes from, and I made a mental note of that. I'm going to try to find it because I'm not sure. Now, we do know that Saul reigned 40 years, right? So there's definitely time for a 10-year pursuit. But Jeremy's a good Bible student. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt and say, okay, it's 10 years. If you think about that, Saul spent 25% of his reign occupied with one man's whereabouts. That's crazy. That's ridiculous to think about. Matt?
I was just going to comment that these images that we were seeing, I know some people travel there, I haven't, would like to try, but these images that would last throughout the Old Testament, they're doing it right now. They're doing this whatever last year or a few years ago. That's where they're walking. We're looking at this from 1 Samuel's perspective, but all through the Old Testament, the terrain's the same. The buildings were different, the walls were different, but it's still the same area. So
Yep.
that should be lasting, and thank you for that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.